All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third bootcamp session. And this one will be really focusing on the PRD, which is one of the main responsibilities of a PM and what we kind of curate throughout the whole project timeline. But before anything, there's some announcements written on the board by Tim. First, check Slack. That's our main source of communication for our club. So all of our reminders or updates or any bootcamp stuff will also be posted on there. There's membership dues. Again, they're completely optional, but we would really appreciate it if there's a $15 due. And I think there should be a link on Slack, but I believe it's also through PayPal because of ASI stuff. And then if you want to take this class for course credit, please fill out the form that is also on Slack. It's an initiative that we just started this year. So we've never gotten credit in the past, but we're trying to offer it for this year. Not too sure on the details, but I'm sure all the details are on the forum. So if you're interested,
Is it either non-computer science majors?
I feel like it does. Not entirely sure. I would double check. But yeah, the form is on Slack. Also, there's a pumpkin patch this Saturday, 12. Hello. Awesome. The pumpkin patch this weekend. I think you will also be paired with your mentor if you signed up for that too by that time. So it would be a really cool time to get to know them and all that. And it'll be really fun. I can't make it, but I'm sure it'll be really fun. And then again, bootcamp. Oh, this is kind of new. So bootcamp projects. We are also kind of implementing this just to make sure everyone's committed to the club and you don't have people drop. But we're hoping to use the bootcamp project as kind of a gauge on how committed you are. And in doing so, the kind of progress you have on your bootcamp project will kind of help out in your prioritization for what nonprofit you'll be paired with. Basically, if you show that you're really involved with the project and up to date with the bootcamp, we'll take that into consideration when pairing you with the nonprofits after you fill out the interest form. So yeah, really happy to see you both here. By the way, really appreciate it. But I'll also put that reminder again in the online resource as well. So you're all aware. But yeah, after those reminders, we'll start with the boot camp and we'll also introduce our project that will start for the session. So what is a product requirements document, or a PRD, which is an acronym we'll be using from now on? It is a document that is used to outline the product and features to be delivered to the client. In this case, it is the nonprofit. Sorry, can you guys read? Oh, I make this part. And it should be a live document, meaning that not only should it be sent and reviewed by both the client and the project team, but it should constantly be revised and updated as the project progresses and as the timeline is adjusted as development goes on, which will be probably often. So keep that in mind. And why are they important? We often say that they're kind of the most important document for this project because it really establishes what is expected for the deliverable and what we expect it to do, and also what the projected timeline for the product is. So it really helps in documentation and also documenting the problem being addressed and establishing the MVP. And the MVP is the minimum viable product, which we'll explain later. And yeah, it really just cements kind of what both sides know is going on, what we are addressing, what is expected from both parties. And it helps with alignment with the tech lead and design for user stories and user journeys, as well as user flows. And again, we'll go more in depth in those terms. But basically, by working together and confirming and collaborating with the tech lead and user and design, it really helps, have everyone, again, on the same page, know what's expected. And in the industry, if you kind of look at industry examples, they might look a little different. Hack for Impact kind of follows this template, I guess, mainly because we do not focus on the business aspect, because we are a club and there's no kind of business financial aspect of this. So, and because of that, some aspects of the PRDs might differ from examples you see online. And that's totally fine. Again, all of this is really for the benefit of the client and the team. So it's very flexible, and again, it should be adjusted according to your needs. So these are the sections of the PRD. It might seem a lot. So what we did for this bootcamp is we're basically splitting it in half. So right now we will just be focusing on these 6, which is the description, problem statement, any terminology, the user stories, the MVP, and the feature set. So yeah, and by kind of establishing the foundation through these 6 features, that also helps a lot for the following features and laying them out. So the first one is organization description. That's pretty self-explanatory. You kind of just express who the client is, what their mission is, what they do, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And in terms of the problem statement, that focuses on really, writing out the problem. And the problem is definitely one of the first things you should really cement during your first call with your client. And it's this section of the PRD should really define what is the problem and what is the problem that the software should be addressing. And this section should have as much context as possible. To help, you could include questions like, how is it impacting the work and the mission of the clients? Why can't it be easily solved with as of right now, or with other existing options that the nonprofits may have? And who is impacted by this pain point? And in this document, it's really important to bring, again, as much context as possible. And the more information, the better. Again, this whole PRD is really about documentation, and it should be very readable to anyone who has no idea what or no context of what this project is. So it's very important to be thorough, and in doing so, it also helps kind of bring your mindset back to the problem that the software should be focusing, instead of just being carried away. And then project specific terminology. So this includes any acronyms and terminology used with its full form and description. So again, that's pretty kind of self-explanatory, but for example, it's if you use Cal Poly SLO in the document, you have to define what that means. California Polytechnic University, San Luis Obispo. And then, because again, you have to make it readable so that everyone can understand what's being described. In terms of kind of real world usage, or not real world, but real club experiences. One organization was Hospice of SLO, and they worked with doulas. And it's what are doulas? I don't know. And turns out they're very trained healthcare professionals that help with clients that are either for childbirth, or in their context with nearing the end of their lives. So kind of explaining that terminology is really helpful. And sometimes it might just be given in your mindset, but it might not be for others. So that section is very helpful. And the next is user stories. So user stories are kind of sentence scenarios that describe certain features a user will use to accomplish a specific goal. So what that means is that it should really pinpoint certain components of the application a user should be able to interact with that can directly address a pain point. As it says, it should be at least one user story for each required feature. And a lot of them typically follow this format, which is like, as a occupant, I want to be able to do this so that I can do that. And there's an example below. As a volunteer, I want to see all available volunteer slots so that I can sign up where I am most needed. So listing these user stories in a section really, again, helps focus what features should really be prioritized in the product and what should be expected, or like what is the expected outcome for including these features. And it really helps, guide the development process. And by creating those user stories, by establishing kind of these scenarios of the different users you might have like volunteers, you might have admins, and both of those roles might have different responsibilities or like requests. And by gathering all of those user stories, you'll get a better sense of the solution that is needed. And there is a quote from Henry Ford, who is the creator of Ford vehicles. And he was like, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And that kind of like, creates a message like, oh, sometimes people don't really know what they want, or also what's even feasible, which is again why we included the whole like previous bootcamp session about like tech stack and all that. Your clients may not know what you want or what they really want or need. So it is up to us to really establish a viable solution. And a big question to ask is this an issue that can be solved with software? Our club is all about like making a web app for local nonprofits, but sometimes we really need to like center ourselves and be like, oh, is software really the best solution? Sometimes it's not as beneficial to be like creating a bunch of like repetitive software that may not have as long as a lifespan. And maybe the best answer is something that's not tech related. Maybe they just need another employee role that like can really focus on their pain point. But it's up to us to really determine what is viable and helps them in the long run. And as PMs, you don't need to really address this problem as of now, because I've kind of already like filtered through the nonprofits and like figured out which nonprofits need software. So, you worry about that, but it's like, in real life situations, if you're ever in this kind of position again, it's really nice to kind of recenter yourself and like look at the big picture. So that being said, you get the user stories, you think of a solution, and once you're confident, you have to justify it. So you might have to kind of think to yourself, does this address all of the issues? What are any alternative solutions? And why is this solution favorable to others? So again, it's all about being thorough and including as much context as possible. So someone should be able to read this section and finish it without having a single question about your approach. Am I missing anything? Okay, so yeah. So, and in establishing a solution, because this is software, that leads to establishing a minimum viable product, or MVP for short. And that is the most basic set of features needed for this application to solve most of the problems for the nonprofit partner. Or it's just like the must-haves in order to make this functional and like helpful. So again, you should really talk with your partner to determine which features are most important versus like just more of like to haves. in order to determine the feature sets that are, you know, the bare minimum. And we do not hand off the MVP because of course we don't want to just give them the bare minimum. We want to like add extra features that improve their experience and like, user navigation and, address more pain points as possible. But establishing the MVP really helps prioritizing tasks and getting feedback early on what are the most important features to focus on. And again, by establishing this, we can really focus on the impact first of really helping our partners, our nonprofits, instead of kind of getting carried away with adding as many like fancy features as possible. Because that's often, likely like developers just like get ahead of themselves and start like adding a lot of things they like instead of really recentering of like, oh, what does the client want and need? So in terms of the PRD, some PRDs don't really have a solution / MVP section, but it's really up to you whether or not to include that section. I think it's helpful because it really, again, helps recenter and like focus the whole PRD's purpose, but it's up to you if it helps your kind of organization. So the next aspect of the PRD is listing out the features and components of the product. So features are behaviors of the application that directly fulfills a user's need. And in this document, we kind of lay it out in a table that divides it by features and by components. And it could be kind of confusing determining what is a feature versus a component, but a component is a distinguishable part of the function that is needed to implement that function's feature. So components are within features. And if it helps, these are some examples. So the top table is towards like Instagram. So, and Instagram has features including making a post. And in order for that feature to be possible, it has to include components that help post with an image or post with a description and add tags. And in terms of Instagram's mission, this is crucial for their whole function. So it's considered an MVP. In contrast, maybe in viewing and interacting with a post isn't as necessary, but it's nice to have. So it's considered desirable. And for that feature to work, the developers would need to make components that help with commenting, liking, and searching with hashtags. So this kind of, organizes what the user wants and then what the developers need to make in order to make that feature happen. And then the table below is kind of more examples of like nonprofit scenarios. So a lot of them are dealing with kind of portals. So a lot of them request login and sign up features for their users. And that would include creating an account, logging in, recovering their password and or username through like email authentication. And that's an MVP. And you guys can view the rest of the examples, but the scope again is really subjective. And again, it's determined on their client and what they think or what they like really need. So yeah, the scopes can vary, but that is generally how they're organized and how they're displayed in the PRD. So those are the main PRD features that we'll be focusing for now. And then we'll introduce the Bootcamp project, which is making a PRD for Spotify. Are you both like familiar with Spotify? Okay, cool. So we'll be making a document for them. And for this milestone, we just want to include the feature that we just mentioned, which is the description, problem statement, project terminology, and user stories. We're hoping for everyone to include at least 3 user stories that focus on 3 different features, and then the table with the product features and components. And yeah, so establishing, oh, this is due by Monday. And if there's any conflict with the deadlines, please let us know. Like, it's totally chill, but we would love for everyone to do this project. And by establishing this, it really helps with the second half of the PRD, which will be another bootcamp project task. So we would love for everyone to make it on a Notion page. Are you all familiar with Notion? Okay, have you checked the resource page on that's in the PM Slack? Okay. No, you're good. Yeah, so that Notion page has all of the recordings and slides posted, as well as, you know, any other resources that we may find.
Is it the bootcamp resource?
Yes, yeah. So that's through Notion. So Hack for Impact uses Notion as like kind of the main platform for all of our notes and resources. So if you have any questions on making a page on it, please let me know. And then, okay, I know it says link it to the PM Slack, but just DM me your URL whenever you're done with it. And again, it's like we'll constantly edit it as time goes on. And we're hoping to have like everyone revise each other's or like give feedback. So we'll do that in our next session. And then we will also provide a template for you for PRDs, and as well as last year's examples. So you have a good reference on like, you know, what previous PRDs are like, especially for nonprofits, and kind of how it's laid out. And that again will be in that Bootcamp Notion page. And after making, I mean, like, you guys all know what Spotify is, but we would love to keep kind of the user story and the information architecture in mind, which is what we mentioned in last session, because it really, by establishing the MVP and also the features and also the information architecture, that really helps with the user flow that you will have to be making next project session. So by kind of having like a mental run through of how it works, that'll really help in the long run. I guess as a heads up, the next bootcamp deadline is after Hollow weekend. So if you want to like work on it ahead of time, you know, if you know you aren't going to be productive, that's totally fine. But me and Emily will also be doing this project alongside with you guys. So if you have any questions, like please feel free to DM us. And we might have office hours later as well, just for any like ongoing questions you may have. That's still in the air. We'll let you know. But yeah, I think that's it. So do you have any questions for what's expected or any of the information? It might be a lot, so you good? Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's like we could have like put all of the PRD in one session, but I felt like it might be too much. But awesome, great to hear. So I hope this is a good introduction to PRDs and help you with the whole process. And again, we will hopefully be reviewing it on Monday. So try to have yours finished by then. But yeah, I think that's it. So thank you so much for coming and see you guys on Monday. But yeah.